Arylic recently sent me their H50 amplifier, and after a few weeks of operation, I have 4 ideas on how to improve the performance of this amp. Now, there's one issue with this amplifier that I can't even understand is still possible in today's market, so be sure to stick around until the end where I discuss that further. Let's jump right into my first idea next. Now, my first idea would be to simply drop the phono input on the H50. On paper, there are a lot of connectivity options on this amplifier, including Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, a phono input, a line input, HDMI ARC for your TV, USB Type A, and USB Type C. Now, with all these connectivity options, I found the phono input to sound the worst, honestly. It was very dry and thin and not musical. And I actually tested this with multiple turntables, all the way from beginner units up to a high-end project model with an Ortophone Blue cartridge. I just really did not enjoy listening to my vinyl records with this amplifier. And it just makes me think that Arylic was just trying to offer too many connectivity options in general with this amp. And the digital playback on this unit with all those digital options sounds different than the phono. When you switch over to the phono, you just tell it's just not happening with this amplifier. So my first idea would be for Arylic to have just not included the phono at all. I think most people buying this amplifier are looking for the digital options, including the HDMI ARC, and not the phono input. Now, my second idea would be to improve the overall sound performance of the H50. Now, I already talked about how I didn't like the phono input, but the digital playback is an improvement upon phono, but I still found the sound to be very lean and lacking when I was listening to my favorite albums. Now, with all of the music I played, I always found the mid and upper frequencies to be struggling. They always had a distant sound. I just could not get them tuned in line with the bass to have a well-rounded musical output. Now, within the 4-string map, there are over 20 audio preset options, which I find to be completely overwhelming. Going through each of them, trying to find a sound signature I like, and at the end of the day, I didn't really like any of them. Now, I can also fine-tune it myself, and again, as I was trying to do that, I still just could not find a happy medium for my ears when listening to music. And let me tell you something, when this amplifier is at a flat frequency, the sound is lean and thin, as I mentioned earlier. It almost sounds like you're listening to music in another room. A lot of my recent experience with amplifiers involve amps that don't even have tone controls and sound great. So for me to set this up in my system and to have to sit and spend a considerable amount of time to fine tune the EQ exactly the way that my ears want to hear it was a cumbersome process and something that I just generally don't enjoy. Now, one plus side with this amplifier is the HDMI ARC output. It was pretty easy to connect to once I got the settings correct. Everything played through it fine, and it was an improvement over my Yamaha soundbar. Now, there are 2 other annoyances that I want to mention real quickly with this amplifier, and one is when you switch between inputs, the volume remains set at the level with the prior input. Let me give you an example. If you're listening at level 33 on your phono input and you switch to line input to listen to, say, a CD player, the line input that you were previously listening to, that volume level, let's say it was 45, it will jump from the 33 input on the phono to the 45 input on the line. So there's a jump in the audio volume playback, which can be kind of jarring if you're switching between inputs. To me, I feel like all of the volume inputs should just stay the same no matter what input you're on. That way, let's say you're switching from HDMI ARC on your TV. Let's say you're done watching TV and you want to switch to your turntable. there's not going to be a huge drop or rise in volume when you make that switch. Now, the second annoyance is that sometimes when I would power the unit on and start to use the input that it was currently on, let's say I wanted to use my CD player and it was on line input. I would power the unit on, it's already set to line input, and I would press play on my CD player, and nothing would happen. The CD would start playing, but I couldn't hear any music. I would have to switch the line input to one up or one below, let's say to phono, something along those lines. Then when I went back to line input, I would start hearing music. It was almost like the unit was asleep and I had to change inputs in order to get that audio playback to begin. My third idea would be to simply adjust the price. The H50 comes in at $399. And I just find that price to be too high for the sound performance it actually provides. Now, I think I understand why Arylic has it set at this price, and it's probably because of the myriad of connectivity options that they are giving the consumer. But for me, I would prefer to lower those connectivity options, just offer few that sound better for a lower price. I think that would get consumers a lot more excited about the product rather than having a lot of connectivity options that don't really sound that great. I mentioned in the beginning that this unit has one issue that absolutely surprised me was still something that would happen in today's market, and that is my fourth idea, which is to fix the popping noise. That's right, when you're using this amplifier and you power it off, it makes a pop, like especially through my subwoofer. Now at first I thought it might be my Emotiva subwoofer, like I mentioned earlier, that I have connected directly to the subwoofer output on the H50, but I watched a few other reviewers that have talked about this product and they had the same issue, so I knew it wasn't just my setup. But this is so strange to me. Now, if you go through my channel and look at other videos I've made, you'll know that I love vintage audio. And I'm used to having vintage receivers like Marantz or Pioneer, Sansui, Harman Kardon. And sometimes with those vintage units having aging capacitors in the power supply, they can make a popping noise when you turn them off or on. But I was absolutely surprised to have a popping noise coming from a modern day unit. I have no idea what is causing this issue, but I think Arylic really needs to solve for it going forward. I think I can best sum up my thoughts about this amplifier with this example. Over the weekend, as I was putting the final touches on this review, I said to my wife, I can't wait to get the H50 out of our system and so I can put in a different amplifier and enjoy listening to my music again. She laughed, but I think that says everything about whether or not I would recommend the H50 amplifier to someone who's looking for great musical playback at this price point. Now, this isn't the only amplifier that I thought could be improved upon. The IEMA A08 had a few quirks that really drove me crazy. If you'd be interested in learning more about my ideas on how to improve that amplifier, you can do so by watching this video here.